Hello everyone, my name is Kamal Manocha. We are back with an interesting and very intuitive webinar. We have had more than 50 fund managers coming on PMS AIF World, India's one of the most trusted platforms for doing investments. We have had many discussions on topics related to equity as an asset class. Today, we have very special guests and we are talking about debt as an asset class in depth. Over last 1 year, we have seen equity market rallying throughout, despite too many odds. But at this juncture, when we see that equity market in terms of valuations are high, investors are looking to know what are the other areas where one can make return equivalent to equity with obviously taking some risk. And debt offers a lot of opportunities in this regards, but debt as a subject requires a lot of understanding. And that is where I have today very special panelists, Rakshat and Soumya, who represent the team at Centrum Alternative Assets, who have been very successfully managing alternative investment fund focused on the space of private credit. And today from them, we will understand that space in depth. Before we start, I would like to introduce Rakshat and Soumya. Rakshat comes with 22 years of experience, particularly in the space of structured finance. He started his career after doing chartered accountancy with ICICI Bank. Then he was associated with Nomura. He was also associated with Deutsche Bank. In his last stint before Centrum at Nomura, he has spent 8 years specifically doing structured finance or doing private credit deals. He is supported by Soumya, who comes with 12 years of experience, started his career with doing MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and then he was associated with ICRA and then DSP Mutual Funds. He supports Rakshat in managing Centrum Alternative Investment Fund, which is focused on the private credit space. Welcome, both of you. Before we start, right, I would, myself, I'm keeping a lot of interest in this space to understand this space which is flourishing. Rakshat, please introduce us, to the space of private credit. What is this space all about, and what is the relevance of this space in today's context? Over to you, Rakshat.
Thank you, Kamal, and hello everyone, and thank you for joining this session on private credits. Just as introduction, the team here at Centrum Alternatives, we manage a private credit fund which is focused on lending to Indian corporates. This is a SEBI registered category 2 AIF, and Centrum Capital is the sponsor for this AIF. So before I spend or take you through the private credits, as a topic, let me just spend 2 minutes on Centrum as a platform. Centrum is a diversified financial services house which focuses on multiple businesses like microfinance, MSME lending, housing finance, where they have Morgan Stanley as a private equity partner, the wealth management and institutional research and broking. Centrum is managed by Mr. Jaspal Bindra as its executive chairman. Now, on private credits, I think it's a very interesting asset class, and it has seen a fair bit of action in last couple of years in India, with multiple credit funds being especially set up to do this business. And historically, there has been, I would say, the global banks had done it more actively for a fair bit of time from an Indian subcontext. Now, to understand private credits, it's basically, I would say that this is more akin to a private equity as a asset class. And there are numerous situations with corporates where they have to go outside of their traditional sources of lending, which is primarily your banks, who provide your usual term loans or working capital. And sometimes there are always needs for these companies, and that's where the credit funds can sort of make a play. Now, in terms of these situations, these events, etc., there are situations where sometimes companies are doing projects and where the debt of a particular project will obviously come from a bank in terms of its project financing. but sometimes there are equity that you need to put in a particular project. Sometimes companies do not have that equity amount that they need to put in that project, so sometimes they do access public markets on equity, or sometimes they go to some of these credit funds, or I would say platforms outside their usual banks, etc., or the regular banking channels, and that's where that's one of the end use. Sometimes people, these corporates do multiple capital expenditure projects, and the revenues of these projects are exactly not in line with the debt that you have borrowed, or because of any macro outlook, because of any generally on the business decision, etc., the cash flows are really not in line. So in particular, what we have seen is that historically banks or maybe NBFCs in India used to fill in that gap, and over a period of time, as we all have noticed in India, banks, because of their own NPA cycle, and NBFC models, especially the wholesale banking models, are because lack of their own liquidity and lack of their own leverage, are I would say not as active as they have been historically there. And because of that, these companies, where there's a continued need of this kind of a capital, will always go outside of their banking framework and go to these credit funds and take this kind of a capital. These are essentially short-term in nature. These are, I would say, they fill in the temporary gap of whenever there is a cash flow mismatch, and they are sometimes also event linked in terms of its exit. So to summarize, I think private credit is sort of a capital that's basically a company's or corporates borrow in order to whenever there are I would say non-vanilla sort of situations that these corporates have these kind of need for the capital, which are not filled in by the banks or for that matter NBFCs, and that's where the credit funds have a bigger play. In terms of if you look at more global perspective around this, I think credit funds are a very, very old concept in the Western developed world, and it sort of became much more prominent after the I would say the global financial crisis, where there were more regulatory scrutiny, there was more regulatory capital that you had to assign to this kind of lending, and as a result, banks also shrunk in their balance sheets. And some of these kind of financings which banks were trying to do before the GFC, it became a lot more prominent to do outside the banking framework, and that is how the credit funds became much more bigger and a larger role to play in the basic lending to the corporate sort of space. In India, again coming back, I think I think last couple of years, I think as I said, the banks and NBFCs have been slow, so credit funds have played a dominant role, and I think that in terms of their size and the scale of operations are only going to become bigger and will provide a very, very sustainable and a stable and regular source of capital to the companies in India. This is how we feel about this entire space.
Well, this is very, very interesting, Rakshat. I'll tell you, around 2018, in the beginning, right, I was met by a couple of corporate bankers who come from same college from where I did my graduation, and who also kept a lot of interest. And we, as three friends, were also kind of at that point of time figuring out if we launch our own AIF in this space, because we were also finding the space as growing and very interesting space. But then, to all of us surprise, the Yes Bank fiasco happened, and that shattered our confidence. But obviously, it is a lens through which you see. At the same time, you guys have actually successfully launched and built a fund and raised it to 700 crores. So it is very, very interesting. And because I have a firm belief in this segment and in terms of opportunity over next maybe 5, 7, 10 years, especially, I would like to understand from you particularly straight away that what is it you're doing in your fund? What is your fund all about? What is the philosophy of that fund? We will come to understanding the risk part of it maybe later. But particularly, if you have to explain to me the product features, what are they like?
Okay, so first of all, AIF as a space is the regulator is SEBI. So these are it's a you have to get a registration and with SEBI to basically start a credit fund, or which is called the AIF space. There are multiple categories. Ours is a category 2 AIF. And in terms of there are always currently the way we function. I mean, this is basically a 4-year fund. In which there is a period in which you generally raise capital. There is a period in which you deploy capital, and then there is, I would say, is the harvesting period, which is called the over the life of the tenure of the fund. So for us, we started raising capital in somewhere in middle of 2019, and I would say, so far we have done approximately 7 transactions, aggregating to about 800 odd crores. Out of those 7 transactions, there has been some exits that we have seen. So 3 exits also we have seen in terms of when we had invested capital with some of the companies, and it has sort of played out. And so earlier than their scheduled contract maturity profile, we have had some exits. So broadly speaking, I think whenever you look at any fund, I think the focus is always on what is the core investment strategy, what is the investment hypothesis, where does the fund believe that they have got opportunity, and where do they deploy capital and make money out of it. Just to carry it further, if you look at the credit space in India, I would categorize these funds into broadly 2 buckets. The first bucket is where these performing credit sort of situations, wherein these companies are around for a long time, they are profitable, they are dividend paying, they are established and matured businesses, well-known companies, etc. But because of various reasons, as I said, sometimes there are macro outlooks, sometimes there are because of their own end use, etc. I think there are needs for certain kind of capital which is outside of their regular banking or a traditional source of banks, etc. And the other segment of the fund strategies are generally where the funds are investing in a lot more stressed sort of situations, or the companies which have gone through a bit of NPA cycle. I think they need some sort of rescue capital. They need some sort of capital which can help them to turn around with maybe new incumbent management, etc. So I would say that would be a broadly 2 sort of buckets. We operate in Fund 1. The strategy is more towards performing space, and that's where we focus on. And as I said, we from our fund construct, the strategies A is performing credits. B, there is also sectoral preferences, or I should say there are certain sectors that in Fund 1 we currently don't do. For example, we don't do real estate at this stage. We don't do large parts of infrastructure, the greenfield businesses, and and things like that. We focus on companies which are, as I said, a lot more core economy, a lot more manufacturing, industrial sort of situations. And because of various reasons, there is obviously a need for us to sort of make a play there, just because banks and NBFCs have been generally slow. And because of that, I think we also are a lot more focused on that we don't do very, very long tenure of transactions. For us, we believe that if there is a large business which is going through its own temporary blip, I think some bit of capital injection in some of these kind of companies with right customized financial structures helps them to achieve their objective. And whenever we feel that, and whenever there are some course correction in economies, whenever there is a reversal of cycle, I think we so far we have seen actually in all our investments so far here that these companies then go to once they sort of become better, or some of those issues are behind them, then they go back to the regular banks and then sort of give you an exit. So that's where the focus for us has been, and we have seen so far the strategy has really played out for us. So we will from a fund perspective, we will continue to raise capital. I think by middle of this year we will I think we'll deploy it typically towards outer side of next calendar year, and we think that in next 2-3 years thereafter, I think the fund will have a the tenure of the fund will exit. And then once we sort of do this fund, and I think the strategy will pretty much will be followed towards our successive funds as well.
Sure. So, Rakshat, to understand this fund better, I think, it would be good if you could take some examples and talk about maybe one or two deals that you have done, maybe lately, or a deal, which you have more details about and which you think are simpler for our audience to understand.
So sure. Let me take you one transaction that we did, last year, middle of last year. This is a consumer electricals company, a branded, the retail franchise that the company has developed. It's reasonable size in terms of, its scale of operations. I would say that this is something around 2,000, 2,500 sort of revenue profile type of a company. Very well known in terms of their branded retail presence on a pan-India basis. Apart from, and they have multiple products that they sell to the, pan-India on the retail presence. This company has been, just to give you a perspective, I think has been growing 20-30% in terms of its, growth rate over the last couple of years on the revenue. And there has been a steady, I would say, margins. The gross margins in this business is roughly about 20-25%. So, the companies for the next level of growth, the company was, I would say, more in search of their equity injection, and to sort of chart out its next level of growth. Then, of course, some of those discussions are underway, and then, the COVID sort of had happened. And as a result, some of the discussions were maybe got delayed or some were underway. And that is where the company thought that maybe, for a temporary period, maybe 1 or 2 years, we can raise money from a AIF stroke a credit fund. And that can also help us to continue their growth momentum, and also timely injection of capital will sort of can they can raise equity maybe 1 or 2 years down the line. So that's how the profile of the business is, and that's sort of the rationale as to why we had lent. So we had given some. So our investment is in the main operating company, in the and also to the promoters. It was structured in that way. It is 2.5, 3 years sort of a transaction. In terms of if you look at risk, return, security, etc. So, in these kind of businesses, what we observed is that, the macro factors around its growth were quite conducive. The company has been steadily growing very, very actively because of their strong retail and distribution franchise. So there was a fair bit of visibility on their earning profile and, how the revenues were sort of coming in from various products in next couple of years. I think the margins were looking to be, at a point where I think, of course, your expenses don't grow really in line with your revenue. So we believe that there is some sort of margin expansion story. So fundamentally, when we look at all our transactions, is that there has to be an underlying equity that has to really play out, or there has to be a strong equity growth that we normally look at in all our portfolio transactions. So this is how the transaction was, this is sort of the profile of the company that we had invested. In terms of the basic constituents, whether how you assess risk and how is the security. So normally these kind of transactions are quite a deep dive into the credit sort of work. You have external diligences, then there are diligences done by the investment team. Generally, the gestation of these transactions are between, you normally take 2 to 4 months to sort of execute. In terms of, when you look at us, from a risk angle, from a security perspective, so whenever you lend to company, they're always in combination of their assets, shareholding, some real estate. So these are always a very, always a well collateralized sort of transactions, wherein whenever there are because they're fundamentally this is debt, so there needs to be a downside protection from a security standpoint. So sometimes people do have a view that you are borrowing money from a credit fund, this is more risky, this is not well collateralized, etc. So I just want to dispel talk about some of these things, that these are well secured transactions. we normally take a cash flow view on some of those companies, and your repayments, your are pretty much in line with how the cash flows are really generated by the companies. And of course, there are events that happen when, like in this particular case that we are talking about, there is an expected equity event that may happen as and when the company really raises equity from a private sort of space. Then you also get an early repayment exit and things like that. So this is how I would sort of describe how we have sort of looked at a particular transaction. uh, Sometimes people do ask you a question as to why the company didn't go to the regular banks, and why did it come to you and things like that. So normally what happens is that, in this particular case, what we saw that, as consumer electricals is a very working capital sort of intensive business. There is a COVID period that was, the undercurrent of COVID was there. So there was, the borrower had sort of envisaged that there would be some stretching of working capital, and as a result, what happens is the existing working capital bankers will obviously shy away beyond a particular point, and that is where the equity requirement is there. So I would again say that some of these private credit situations are always evaluated from a private equity construct, and they are quite deep dive in terms of diligence, well secured, well collateralized, and quite cash flow backed, at least from our fund one performing credit strategy. And these are the transactions that we have seen, and over the last couple of quarters, even in this particular transaction, we have seen the company's performance is pretty much ahead of, or I would say better than pre-COVID levels. There has been a steady improvement in their margins, is what we had sort of envisaged before we made an investment. And I think, overall, I think the financial and operating metrics are only have done better from where it was before. So this is how it is structured. Lastly, just maybe one last point on this transaction. So generally, the commercials on these kind of transactions, I would say, is not too wide. I think people pay you a couple of basis points higher than where your normal bank loans are trading at, or where the company borrows money, and this is how it's sort of priced for us as well. So which then comes to you sometimes, regularly. Sometimes it's also structured as a bit more back end, such that there is more cash flow conservation for the companies, and which they can then use it for their own operations. So that's how we would sort of describe one of our recent transactions which has done very well for us.
Right. So that is quite insightful. I'll also tell you that while you were explaining the the fund, and by taking the example of the transaction you have done, I had ran a poll amongst our audience, and to a simple question that what comes to one's mind first when one thinks of this fund: is it risk or is it return? 75% of people say that what comes to mind first is risk, and which is definitely foremost thing even on my mind. Though all of us understand that higher the risk, higher is the return. To get higher return, definitely some risk is to be taken, especially now when we know that equities and asset class has risen. People have made money, they took risk. It is a very recent example. In 2020, people who invested at lower levels when markets were low, obviously at a time when times were uncertain, they have taken risk, they have made money. But with regards to your fund, which is a credit fund in the private credit space, there are a lot of recent examples of companies going down in terms of ratings, which normally we relate to as risk, which is credit rating, right? What are the so I am basically wanting you to explain us in a very simple terms what are the various pillars that you have built, whether in your philosophy or in terms of your product, or in terms of constructing a portfolio, in terms of keeping it diversified across sectors, or in terms of paying out and creating liquidity available to the investors. So what are the various factors that you guys in your team have thought and are implementing to manage and contain the risk factors, starting from the way you identify the deal, the paperwork you do, right? At every step, risk can be contained. We understand that. I'm sure you guys would have done that. Please explain that in detail to us.
Sure. So, Kamal, I think firstly, as I said, we are quite a sectoral driven fund. I mean, there are certain sectors where we prefer, certain sectors we do not like at this stage. So, I think the point that I'm trying to make is at the outset, I think we need to be very comfortable with the macro outlook around a certain sector. And that is how we then drill down in the choice of companies that, for example, we have been looking at two spaces, say chemicals and cement, for a very long time. We made an investment in 2019 in a chemicals company, but that was more to do with that. First is that the sector that we like, we do. Obviously, there is some bit of sectoral expertise that has got built into the investment team where we focus on. So first is your macro outlook, and that sector view is how we look at it. Second is, I think, once we think that there are good headwinds and, this sector is sort of going to do well, then we obviously figure out that which companies within that, that there is a opportunity for us to make an investment. And of course, that's how, we pick and choose those companies. Obviously, there has to be an availability of capital requirement in some of those companies. There has to be a transaction that needs to be done. So obviously, there is some mix and match that you'll have to do to really pick up those kind of situations. Third is, I think, more importantly, I think you asked about how we assess risk and how risk is contained and mitigated, especially in context of what we have seen in last few years. So I think, the first and foremost point is, I think we take a lot of time in generally understanding the company and its core business. I think some of the learnings that we've all had is that wherever we have looked at invested in transactions, um, um, more from, say, a security standpoint and things like that, I think have not done well. But wherever there has been comfort of the business, wherever there have been the cash flows have been taken as the main base, wherever there has been strong understanding and visibility of their earning profile, wherever we have focused on core business operations, I think, I would say that, I would say, is the first and foremost thing that we sort of look at while we cross a line on a particular transaction. So I think, then there are always external diligences that you always do in addition to the, the risk assessment, risk underwriting that you do as part of your investment team. The process of risk underwriting is very, very rigorous. And thereafter, once you do these kind of transactions, I think then you have to make sure that your legal documentation, your legal work, your credit covenants, your credit conditions are very, very strong. And then, more importantly, as I touched previously, I think since this is primarily a still not equity and a very fixed income sort of a debt sort of a transactions, there are always security, there are always I would say cash flows that we sort of take comfort on in terms of your repayment. These are always, as I said, security in some of these kind of transactions are a combination of, sometimes there are assets, of the borrowers, sometimes there are shareholdings of the sponsors, sometimes there are, assets in the form of real estate, which is outside the entire borrower framework that you normally take security on. Even on security, I think we try to see what is really achievable, what is really realizable in times of a default, times of a stress, and not something which is more mere say on the piece of paper. So I think we take, and there is obviously thorough diligence on some of those security aspects. But more importantly, obviously there are quite a, as I said, fair bit of risk underwriting process that has we normally follow while making investment. But at our case, what we also do very rigorously, and I would say that is the monitoring post or investment. So I think that is something that we have all realized over these years that uh, while making an investment is obviously important, in your selection criteria is important, but equally important is how do you monitor your transactions. So same example, if I take some of the consumer electrical company that we have invested in, what is the monthly sales, what are the different products getting sold, what is the unit price, what are the gross margins, how the company is doing, what is the working capital status, what is the drawing under the working capital that they have done with regular banks, how the cash flow. So I think every month, every particular periodicity every quarter. I think some of those monitoring mechanisms are very, very important. That should give a lot of comfort to the investors. At our end, being in a fund framework, we make sure that we do this deep dive periodic work every quarter. Then we come out with our every quarter we come out with a newsletter where we describe the entire transaction, how has been the quarterly performance of the company in terms of its credit, basic financial and operating metrics. Always inform and intimate all our investors. So I think and what monitoring does is that look, you don't get to if there is a red flag, if there is a problem, at least if you're doing a regular monitoring, you will get to know much earlier than later. Obviously in India, if you just rely on a particular maturity date and you say that look, the borrower will come and pay you, sometimes there are issues. So it's always good to be have early on and have these red flag mechanisms and monitor your transactions aggressively. So this is how I think we have built up the entire risk underwriting standards. I think as I told you, we have made about 7 investments so far, and out of 7 we have seen exits for the 3 much earlier than scheduled. So far, as I said, the risk strategy and the overall investment hypothesis has sort of played out for us.
Very interesting. I would quickly want to now ask from Soumya. So the fund sounds very interesting, and you guys have been doing very good work. So Soumya, tell me, I understand that the target profile of an investor for such a fund is someone whose portfolio is upwards of say 5 crore, because obviously this is an alternative investment fund with a minimum ticket size of 1 crore. But right. What are the expectations that an investor should keep in mind, when he's selecting this fund in terms of risk, return, liquidity, and any indicative return that you may want to quote, time horizon you may want to convey, right? So now, put yourself in investor's shoe whose portfolio is say 5 crore and plus, right? He has say 60% allocation to debt, 40% to equity. Debt allocation is obviously, amongst various mutual funds and kind of products where currently the yields are lower. You guys right. are offering higher yield at a cost of higher risk, right? So please explain, what are the risk and return expectations in that regards?
Yeah. So look, I mean, if you look at it today, what are the different kind of instruments or the different kind of investment options that a HNI investor or any investor has in the fixed income space? You would largely find everything bracketed in 2 sets. One is either fixed deposits and the other is basically your mutual funds. Now, if you look at the current yields and how the returns are, it will give you a yield in the ballpark of 4 to 6, maybe 7%. And that's it. Further, if you look at how the interest rate outlook is at this point, we think that this kind of a soft yield environment is going to carry on. I mean, RBI's actions also has been in line with other global central banks, where the general view or the general policy has been to keep liquidity high and rates low so that growth is back on track. In this kind of a situation, we think rates are going to remain soft, and therefore this traditional fixed income products like fixed deposits as well as your mutual funds, the returns will be in ballpark this region. Second, with what has also happened is, typically the banks, etc., banks and mutual funds are also kind of lending only to the government segment or the public sector enterprises segment, where again, the yields on these products are low, and that is the second reason why yields are lower. So when you compare to these kind of products, and that there is no other product really in the fixed income space, private credit funds really give a good opportunity there, because it gives you yields. Let's say ours is a performing credit AIF, and we endeavor to give a return of around 14 to 15% after your management fees and expenses. So that is the kind of a return which an investor can look to achieve from this kind of a fund.
Right. And what is the time horizon, and what are the kind of, is there any liquidity, which is provided in between? So if I am, wanting to invest 1 crore, right? In what time period do I need to invest? What is the time horizon I need to keep in mind? In what time period I get my money back?
Right. So, Kamal, the way it works is once you have a commitment, based on the various investment opportunities that are available and that we decide on investing, there's a scheduled drawdown. Okay. To till September, like Rakshat mentioned, we'll probably continue to raise funds and do the final close in another 5-6 months, and then we have an investment period till September 22. After that, if there are any maturities etc. in our investments prior to that, will get reinvested. But after September 22, any maturities etc. that happen, any coupon that comes back will be repaid back to the investors. The fund overall has it's a 4-year plus 1 year kind of a fund, and kind of will be get wrapped up around September 24 or thereabouts.
So Kamal, just to also add here, see, look at from an investor's perspective, generally these are, fixed tenure funds. You don't have to, draw down all the capital on tray one. I mean, you make capital calls based on what sort of the transactions or deals that the investment team is doing. So I would say on an average, in your example of 1 crore, the drawdown is over I would say 12 to 18 months period. So that's one. Second is in terms of your period of investment. I would say between 3 to 4 years is on an outer side that your funds are being used by the fund. Third, what we have done, at our end is to sort of make, it's a little bit easier for the investors. What we have said that, after a particular cutoff date, which is say September 22, specific to our fund life just finishes in September 24. So, after 2 years before, which is, so we will, any portfolio distributions that come from us, from our underlying deals, we will basically not reinvest. And in fact, that will be given to investors. So with that, what happens is that your average deployment period comes down rather from 4 years on an average, it sort of comes to about 3 odd years. I think, more importantly, I think first of all, investors need to understand that, look, if they want to do fixed income, there are either you do yield, you do interest rate play. So when you do interest rate plays, you basically go to, I would say mutual funds are the right place in terms of playing your AAA, AA, which perfectly correlates your yield curve. If you want to make a credit play, I would say, funds which specialize in credit work, credit experience, dedicated fund teams, I would say that is a better and a preferred alternative to actually, invest money from a credit perspective. Like you have seen, you look at a small cap equity fund, you look at a mid cap equity fund. I think, you would always need dedicated teams, in line with your large caps as well. But I think, I'm just trying to highlight that the work is a lot more intensive, and sometimes given the way AMCs are structured, credit, I would say AIF construct is better to actually make that play. So this is how from an investor's world, and likewise as Soumya mentioned, in current context of where interest rates are, I think if you make your your interest rate play on your AAA and AA, you will make anywhere between 7 to 9%. Whereas if you are in this AIF bucket and you make a credit play, I think the returns, I would say, on a pre-tax basis for investors can, I'm just giving you a broad range. I think investors should expect somewhere between, I would say, 13, 14, 15 thereabouts. What is a typically a fund's investment strategy? Where are they investing money and things like that? For us, it is performing credit. So we think that this kind of a return metrics works. Of course, when you go to stressed and more distressed sort of space, of course, where risks are higher, and of course, then your returns are commensurately higher as well. So this is how this broadly works.
Sure. To our audience, I would just quickly like to add that we guys are doing all these webinars and these discussions purely from the perspective of educating everyone, educating ourselves first of all. we are also exploring this space, trying to understand this fund. Please do not construe all these discussions as a matter of recommendation or an advice. You guys should do your own due diligence, before entering into any product. And with this disclaimer, I would like to add another question, another real question. I'm trying to put myself in investor's shoe. So, to both of you, Rakshit or Soumya, whoever wants to answer this question, right? We have seen mutual fund, especially the credit opportunities mutual fund as a space, right? Which has been under a lot of, I would say, bad talk because of returns going down, because of too many papers getting derated and coming down. Today, credit opportunities funds are not popular at all. At one point of time in 2018, 17, and before that, credit opportunities funds were very popular. Now, obviously, you have rightly mentioned that alternative investment fund structure is better to play credit opportunities, right? But at the same time, most of the investors and I would say advisors as an audience have not experienced private credit space too much. Corporate bankers have done, but investors in general, maybe normal retail investors, institutional investors would have done, but retail investors or HNI investors have not experienced. And normal thought comes to my mind that maybe, a known enemy is better than an unknown enemy, right? Mutual credit opportunities, mutual funds are a known enemy, but, yours is an unknown enemy, right? So I'm just trying to, put myself in investor's shoe. And if I will take this product to any investor and I will discuss with him, and he's an HNI investor, he will ask this question. So how would you answer this question? Why and how you say, keeping risk as a corner point, that AIF as a structure is better in terms of managing risk in comparison to mutual funds? Any one of you can answer this question.
Yeah. So Kamal, let's look at a few ways in which credit risk mutual funds differ from your private credit funds. Okay. So both on the side of risk as well as the side of return. So let me take return first. See, what happens is in a mutual fund kind of a setup, there is a daily redemption obligation. Wherever there is a redemption request, the fund manager has his obligation to make liquidity available. So what happens is that a sizable portion of the portfolio is invested in, either government bonds or a AAA, AAA PSU or bonds like that. These again, as we mentioned earlier, these are pretty low yield bonds. And so what happens is when, a substantial portion, maybe 20-25% or even higher of your portfolio is in such low yielding bonds, overall return of the portfolio, overall yield of the portfolio comes down. Now, this is something that, obviously because of the construct, the fund manager has to carry on. Obviously, those kind of restrictions or those kind of requirements are not there in a private credit fund. And as a result, what happens is that there are better situations where you can manage to invest in higher yield bonds because you do not need to, address this kind of issues or restrictions. Second, let us look at how does credit risk a mutual fund or credit risk fund in a mutual fund setup plays. Okay, so it is one of the, let's say, 5 or 7 or 10 different products on the fixed income space which a mutual fund house has to offer. So what happens more often than not, that it is a small team which is managing or underwriting or even monitoring all the credit or all the investments. So which can go up to 200, 250 and 300 in number. So you can understand that, when a small team has to monitor and underwrite that many large number of issuers, obviously there are some challenges that come with the same. But if you look at the construct of a private credit fund, what we do or what any private credit fund would do is you will have a concentrated portfolio of 10 to 12 issuers. And the team is basically managing the relationship or monitoring it on a very thorough basis. Second part of this is, like Rakshit mentioned, when a credit is underwritten, it usually takes around 2 to 3 months. There is an internal diligence, there's an external diligence, there's a lot of back and forth on the security, trying to get a very valuable asset from the company. So these are certain things which are done in private credit funds. Of course, in a mutual fund setup, because there are daily inflows and outflows, a lot of these challenges come in. Now, look at it in another way. If you look again, harping back to the same point, credit risk fund in a mutual fund portfolio is probably one of the 10 different products that the fund house is offering. And, like Rakshat mentioned, it's the same set of people or the same team which is managing the interest rate risk product. And at the same time, they are the ones who are managing the credit risk product. So, what happens is it's the same people who are managing the both sets of products. But credit is a very specialized thing. And it's like your mid cap or small cap fund, where you need specialized managers who have experience in this sector. If you look at a credit fund, you will find a team which is, which has hardcore experience only in credit, who has the experience of managing situations, managing tough situations, recovering money from that situation and getting exits. So, that is how basically these two products differ. And last but not the least, one of the things I wanted to highlight is that, credit as an asset class, or credit as an instrument is such a thing where there might be some delay in your money coming back. Okay. It does not mean that the credit has totally gone bad or you have lost all your money. It could just be a simple thing that there was a event which was supposed to happen. It happened 1 month later and your cash inflow was contingent on that. So what happens in a private credit fund setup is that the fund manager gets enough time to resolve the issue, get the money back and pay it back to the investors in full. But at the same time, if you go into a mutual fund setup, because there's a daily redemption and there's a daily NAV, any such delays are booked into the NAV at that point of time, which can obviously come back when the money gets realized, right? But what happens is, in the meantime, if an investor gets out, he basically books that loss at a lower NAV. So this is also a minor, this might seem a minor point, but from an investor's perspective, this is something that they also need to kind of keep in mind when they want to actually play the credit as an asset class.
Sure. So Rakshat, would you like to add?
Yeah, so Kamal, I think when you compare it with asset management companies, mutual funds, and compare a private credit fund in an AIF construct, I think few things that come to my mind. One is, I think the whole process of risk underwriting. Fundamentally, what we have seen is that I think the size and scale of mutual funds from a fixed income credit funds perspective obviously is very large. But if you look at, I think majority of that AUM is lot more oriented towards interest rate play, and that's the point that I'm trying to highlight, that the fund investment teams at mutual funds are a lot more geared and lot more experienced in interest rate play and your AAA, AA, high rated companies, high grade credit. When you come to credit funds, this is it's not that it's not a high grade credit and things like that, but you have to understand that there is a corporate, there is a situation that needs a financing which is not tailor made or understood well or researched well, given the way construct at an AMC is. So that is why you have a specialized team with experience in dealing with credit work. So you have to understand that there is an interest play and then there is a credit play. So the credit play is very specialized, takes time to originate, takes time to execute. A lot of things have to be worked around, as I said, monitoring, underwriting risk, and of course, eventually working towards exit. I think those sort of I'll not say flexibility, but that's those sort of AMCs are not it's constructed that way. I think that's important. Second is, if you look at, I think from a return matrix as well, of course, I think investors should not paint it with the same brush. That is what I'm trying to highlight. Investors should make a differentiation between that. If they are playing liquid AAA, AA interest rate plays, should not the asset class is different. Do I think people will call it in the same debt world, same credit world, but that's not how it is. So people, investors need to, of course, there will be a learning process, but I think, given the way we are, a lot of our peer group is actually working, a lot of other credit funds are there. I think, people are quite savvy, in terms of their own assessment, how the credit funds are doing. And as I'm telling you, this asset class in India will only multiply it from here, Kamal, because I think, sorry, maybe I'm extending the entire question, but I think, what I see going forward in India is that, the capital requirement of companies will continue to grow. People will continue to grow, expand, have issues. Your banking framework, I think, will be a lot more focused on, provide your regular banking, regular trade finance, working capital, project loans, capex loans, etc. I mean, look at like this: why there is a need to set up an infrastructure bank that the government has signed up, and so because there is a need for a specialized finance. It's not that there is IDBI, IFCI, ICICI not there. They're all there, and they have been doing project loans and infrastructure loans for a very long time. But I think there is a moment of reckoning by the government that, look, there is a specialized form of finance that is required, and that can only be done by a proper development financial institution which understands the risk parameters and then can lend in that space. Similarly, I would say that, for credit funds as well, I think people will eventually understand that this is more a credit rate play and not an interest rate play.
Right. Thank you so much. I think, now we are running out of time, so we will have to quickly kind of conclude this session. But, before we come to the end, I would like to add that private credit as a space requires deep diving and more such interactions, especially, when it's coming from a player like Centrum, which is building its name. And I can tell you again, putting myself in investors' shoe, because Centrum has a lot of other businesses as well. Investors will have questions like, what are the synergies within the group in terms of, various other businesses, or if there is any conflict of interest, because all HNI investors these days are getting very informed and they ask all these questions. So, we will come back again, guys, and continue our discussion from here on with an endeavor to keep building in terms of an education series with regards to understanding the private credit space, which is being pioneered by Centrum through their, very successfully running Credit Opportunities Fund. Thank you very much, Soumya. Thank you, Rakshat, for your time. We'll come back soon and we'll connect again. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you for arranging this. I hope it was useful for you as well as to the wider audience. Thank you.
Pleasure.